Howdy y'all, it is me, JSoldierPro once again. Y'all, today, the Wave 6 teaser trailer, as me and many other people have been expecting, has come out today! And the Nintendo Direct, and I am going to be giving my opinions on it, and I'm going to be doing an analysis of it, so let's get to it! Let's start off with the characters, and the very first character to discuss is none other than Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong first appeared in Mario Kart Double Dash, then reappeared in Mario Kart Wii, reappeared afterward in Mario Kart Tour, and now has reappeared once again in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. As far as my opinions on Diddy Kong being added, I am absolutely thrilled. Diddy Kong has a massive fan base, not only in Mario Kart, but also in the Donkey Kong Country community as well. And in general, pretty much everybody likes Diddy Kong. Even people who don't even really care for Diddy Kong still don't really hate him, which made Diddy Kong a perfectly safe choice for Nintendo. And not just a safe choice, but also a choice that people really wanted. So overall, it makes perfect sense for Nintendo to include him, and I am happy that Diddy Kong is finally in the game. Great job on this pick. The next character being added to Wave 6 is none other than Funky Kong. And personally, I am extremely excited by his inclusion. Funky Kong does originate in Donkey Kong games, as you would expect with him being a Kong, but ultimately his popularity stems from Mario Kart Wii. Funky Kong has become synonymous with Mario Kart Wii, which itself is one of the most popular games in the entire series. And ultimately, Nintendo has been really heavy on trying to reel in Wii nostalgia in the Booster Course Pass, credible Wii track selection, Mushroom Gorge, Coconut Mall, Maple Treeway, DK Summit, Koopa Cape, Moonview Highway. So ultimately, it isn't the biggest shock in the world that they decided, hey, let's bring back the character that's associated with Wii in order to really intensify this even further. Ultimately, I am extremely happy that they chose to bring back Funky Kong. He's one of my favorite characters in the series, not because of his stats in Wii. I could care less about that. I just love his style. He looks super cool and chill, which really appeals to me. And yeah, he's one of my favorite characters in the entire series, I'll admit it. Ultimately, thank you, Nintendo, for bringing him back. It really is a great choice. Moving onward, the next character to discuss is none other than Pauline. Pauline has her origins back in the Donkey Kong games, and she also is very prominent in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games, of course. But I'd say in recent years, her popularity has really grown. I think this is largely because she was in Super Mario Odyssey, not just as a side character that had a very limited role, but instead, she was a very prominent part of one of the most popular parts of the entire game, New Donk City, where she was mayor. And in general, I would say this really elevated her popularity quite a bit. She was in the Super Mario Bros. Movie, even if only a little bit, and she's playable in Tour. So ultimately, Pauline is this character that I see that has really grown in popularity over recent years. People are starting to realize, hey, this character is pretty neat, and so I think it's about time that Pauline found her way into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. She's a pretty neat character, and overall, I could definitely see myself playing as her from time to time. I think she's a great addition. Lots of people have been wanting her. So yeah, good job, Nintendo. I think this was a great pick on your end. And the final character to discuss is none other than Peachette. Peachette is an interesting choice. So far, we have gone 3 characters back to back to back W's. Absolutely amazing picks, but Peachette kills the streak. Dead. Massacred. It's slaughtered. No point of return. What on earth, Nintendo? Nobody predicted Peachette, but not because Peachette is some underrated gem. No, Peachette is a character that should have never been created in the first place. Peachette originates from New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and Peachette originates from this game when you collect a Super Crown power-up and you convert into Peachette. That is stupid. And Nintendo decided that this character that just about nobody on this planet cares about deserved a spot over Nabbit, over Poochie, over Charge and Chuck, over King Ba-Bomb. Seriously, Nintendo? Peachette! Peachette! You choose Peachette? What? sorry, what? Is this some kind of insane troll? Was there something I'm missing? Nintendo, this is like a joke on wrong. This is when you're like, oh, actually, that was a troll. Here's the actual character. Nintendo, you have seriously implemented what is going to be one of the worst characters in the entire game's roster. And you have put it in the final wave of the DLC after Diddy Kong, after Funky Kong, after Pauline. What have you done, Nintendo? Peachette! Peachette! I'm done. Peachette is a freaking mistake. Not just in 8 Deluxe, as a character in general. It's a character that should have never been created in the first place. What have you done, Nintendo? Moving on from the monstrosity that happens to be Peachette, we can finally move onward and discuss what exactly having 4 characters means for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. What does it mean for Wave 6? And this is interesting because there are only 2 available character slots at this time, and yet we're getting 4 characters. So how exactly is this going to work? Your regularly scheduled programming has been interrupted by Editing J. Alright, I gotta be dead honest with y'all. I did this section originally, and part of my idea involved Funky Kong becoming an alt of Donkey Kong. And to put it mildly, that is one of the stupidest ideas I have ever come up with in my life. So I'm redoing this section because that abomination of a theory I am not going to let persist. Good lord. So the question remains, there's only 2 character slots and yet we're going to get 4 characters. How on earth is this possibly going to even work? Some of my friends on Discord had a pretty interesting idea, and I thought I'd go ahead and I'd share it. There are certain characters in the game, like Cat, Peach, and Tanuki Mario, for example, that realistically should probably be ults of their main character. So Cat, Peach in this example would be an ult of Peach, and Tanuki Mario would be an ult of Mario. So Nintendo could theoretically make these characters ults, which would then open up their previous slots to brand new characters. And this is where you could potentially see Funky Kong placed, or maybe even Peachette, although I think Peachette could actually work as an ult of Peach. All of that being said, this would also open up the possibility of possibly getting more characters in the future, which would certainly be interesting. Nintendo could also simply just grow the roster, just keep everything the same, but just artificially add even more slots. So since there's a total of 50 characters now, Nintendo could make it a 10x5 grid, and that would get the job done. So there's a lot of possibilities here as far as what Nintendo could do. Let's just hope Nintendo doesn't do my original idea and make Funky Kong an ult of Donkey Kong. That would be a very interesting move. Now returning to your regularly scheduled programming. Alright, that's enough talk about the characters. Let's move on to what has been playing in the background this entire time, the track, which happens to be none other than Wii Daisy Circuit! Layout-wise, the track in Mario Kart Tour is pretty much identical to the track in Mario Kart Wii, with there only being a few minor changes, and these changes appear to have carried over into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So let's go ahead and let's talk about those. The first change is that the shortcut where you go through the building now ends with a glider ramp instead of a boost ramp. This is an extremely minor change, admittedly, but I like it. I think it'll work better as a glider ramp than it ever did as a boost ramp, and I think it's a good but minor change. Also, can I just say, Funky Kong looks freaking awesome when he's trekking. And the only other thing that has changed is now there are boost panels along the main bend of the track on this crazy turn. And we can actually see Pauline going along this section of the track in some of the footage. Overall, I think this is a small but nice little addition to the track, and I'm happy it's been changed. There's actually one more change I almost missed, and it's that there is now a ramp right here after the tunnel, and we can see Peachette trick off of it. Again, this is a minor change, but I like it. It helps add more variety to the track, which I think is a good thing. And that's all as far as the drivability drivability goes, only 3 minor changes have been made to the track since its debut in Mario Kart Wii, and that's a good thing. This track did not need an overhaul, and it did not receive one. Even something as minor as the cones are back, which as someone who appreciates small little things, I can definitely get behind. While drivability is most definitely the most important factor, it is not the only one. Let's talk about the visuals of Daisy Circuit. My god, this track looks absolutely gorgeous. Seriously, the skybox looks really beautiful with the sun being pronounced. Same with the clouds as well. You also get to see water around the track, of course, and this water looks absolutely gorgeous. The sun is hitting it just right. It looks like natural water, and my god, it looks so much better than in the Wii version. And in general, the entire track really does just look absolutely beautiful. It's honestly hard to put into words just how pretty this track is, and it looks pretty darn good. However, there is one visual element of this track that I do actually prefer in Wii, and that has got to be the statues. Seriously, something about how the Wii statues look, it looks better than whatever the heck this is. I guess I'd say that the Wii statues are more golden, while the ones in 8 Deluxe are definitely more bronze, and I think the golden statues do overall look better. Also, Daisy's missing her mouth for whatever reason, which I don't really get. Aside from the weird color, I will say the other 3 statues are fine. That all being said, though, I'd say the statues are relatively minor. Overall, this track looks absolutely beautiful, and I will say it is definitely a visual improvement overall from Wii. Another thing, too, about this track has got to be the music. It was already good in Wii, but it sounds even better in 8 Deluxe. I don't know what it is about Daisy, but something about her tracks in the Booster Course Pass, with first being, of course, Daisy Cruiser, and now Daisy Circuit. Something about these tracks, when they get remade, they just get elevated to a brand new level musically, and I don't know what it is, but Daisy, you're doing something right, so I congratulate you on that. My goodness, I cannot wait for this to come into Wave 6, not just to play it, but just also to hear this soundtrack. Man, it sounds good. I do have one more thing I want to point out about the visuals of this track. There's one minor detail which has really stood out to me. So if you look in the background of this image, you will see a cruise ship. Now, a generic cruise ship, there's a lot of water, first glance, no context, probably doesn't seem like anything important, right? But let's think about this real quick. This is Daisy Circuit. And what character in the Mario Kart universe owns a cruise ship? A cruise ship which is also a Mario Kart track? That's right, Daisy. She owns Daisy Cruiser, which also just so happens to be a track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So here's my thought process. This is Daisy Circuit. There's a cruise ship in the background. I don't think it's the craziest thought in the world that this cruise ship is meant to be Daisy Cruiser. To add even more evidence for this, while we don't get to see any kind of signage on the side of it which would show that it's Daisy Cruiser, it appears to be the only cruise ship in the area, with the only other vehicles that we get to see in the water being yachts. So ultimately, I think there's pretty good evidence that this can be assumed to be Daisy Cruiser. And personally, I think that's a pretty cool little detail. My overall thoughts on Daisy Cruiser, if not obvious already, I am looking forward to the track. It looks to be even better than in Mario Kart Wii in just about every single way, and honestly, I'm looking forward to it. I like this track in Mario Kart Wii. I imagine I'll like it slightly more in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I'm looking forward to it. But here's the thing. Does this track need to be in Wave 6? Should it be in Wave 6? I mean, sure, I like the track, and sure, I'm happy with it, but could Nintendo have done better than Daisy Circuit? That's what I want to focus on next. Real quick, however, a speculation warning is indeed in effect for Wave 6 at this point, so if you don't want to be potentially spoiled on what could potentially come to Wave 6, I do recommend you go ahead and you click off the video right now, and I hope you enjoyed what you saw. For everyone who is fine with seeing my speculation, though, let's continue. So if not Wii Daisy Circuit, what could we have possibly gotten instead? That is ultimately the question that I want to answer. First of all, it's very important to understand that Wii Daisy Circuit happens to be what was known as the Mystery Retro track. And this, I would say, is definitely the most interesting part of Wave 6. There are a lot of people trying to predict what exactly we will see in future waves of the Booster Course Pass, and a lot of people have come to a fairly similar consensus when it comes to what exactly we could see in Wave 6. We don't know with 100% certainty, of course, but Wave 6 appears to have a lot more certainty to it compared to the other waves. And the Mystery Retro was really the true anomaly to this, being really the one track where it seemed like just about anything could go. And it was called the Mystery Retro track because there were a bunch of tracks from a bunch of previous entries with vastly different themes that people thought could realistically be included. And it wasn't really clear what preference Nintendo would have as far as which tracks to include and not include. And so I want to explore some of these potential avenues that Nintendo could have gone down, give my opinions on perhaps why Nintendo didn't decide these tracks, and also if it would have been better, in my opinion, if Nintendo would have chosen these tracks. The first track I'm going to explore is none other than 3DS Rosalina's Ice World. Out of all the candidates for the Mystery Retro track, this was the track that I thought had the single best chance of actually being selected by Nintendo and actually getting into Wave 6. Ultimately, I was wrong on that, but that was my interpretation and that was my theory. So why did I believe this? First and foremost, it's a special cup track from Mario Kart 7. It being the final wave of the Booster Course Pass, it makes sense that they would want a special cup track. At least that was my mindset. Another thing as well, Rosalina's Ice World is one of the forgotten tracks in 7. At least I'd say it's a track that falls a bit more under the radar compared to the other Nitros in the game. It's not that nobody knows about this track, but it's just that people don't often think of it when they think of 7. And ultimately, Nintendo has had a tradition of bringing back a forgotten track in every single wave so far. And so Rosalina's Ice World would have done this for Wave 6. Ultimately, though, it did not make the cut. I think this could potentially be simply due to Nintendo thinking that there's enough snow and ice tracks in the game, or perhaps they thought it was a bit too similar to Sherbert Land, which after thinking about it now, I can most definitely understand. But, of course, we don't know why it didn't make the cut. We just know it simply didn't. As far as if it would have been better to have included rather than Wii Daisy Circuit, I would definitely say yes. I will say it does clash a bit with Sherbert Land for sure, but I do ultimately prefer the track theming, and I do think that the track is distinct enough to stand out on its own, and I do think it would have been a better fit for Wave 6, the final wave of the Booster Course Pass, than Wii Daisy Circuit is. Wasting no time, let's move onward to DS Airship Fortress. This is a track that needs no introduction. It's DS Airship Fortress, one of the most popular tracks in the entire series and easily a fan favorite. Me, like many people, absolutely love this track to death, with it being among my favorite tracks in the entire series, and I have been wanting so long for this track to be in the Booster Course Pass. That being said, Daisy Circuit has officially killed any chance this track ever had of coming. So, why didn't it come? I mean, it's a fan favorite, so popularity is not a problem, and in fact, it can be pretty difficult to even figure out why Nintendo wouldn't bring back this track. Nintendo has had no problem bringing back other fan favorites. Just look at the Wii track selection if you need proof of that, but they haven't brought back Airship Fortress, and they won't be bringing back Airship Fortress. So why? The only reasoning I can honestly think of is an argument that I've heard time and time again by people who kept arguing that this track would not come back, and the reason why they listed is that SNES Bowser Castle 3 would likely be coming back in Wave 6, which I agree with. And the reason why that is significant is many people have argued that SNES Bowser Castle 3 and DS Airship Fortress clash as far as their visual styles go, with them looking too similar, and since it would be in the same same wave, the tracks would be too similar, and so Nintendo would not include it for that reason. Now, ultimately, I will say I don't really agree with them being too similar visually, though do keep in mind that this argument is being based off the tour version that has lava, and if the track were ever in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it would of course be the tour version, which of course would retain the lava aesthetic, and obviously SNES Bowser Castle 3 does have the lava aesthetic as well. I will say though, I do agree on SNES Bowser Castle 3 coming to Wave 6, and honestly, the thing is when it comes to Bowser Castle 3, it's important for two key reasons. It's important, one, because we need another Bowser Castle track so that there's more than one Bowser Castle track out of 96 tracks, and secondly, so that there's another SNES track, because ultimately there's only one in the Booster Course Pass, and so more than likely Nintendo's going to add another one into the equation. The only other SNES track which is possible would be Vanilla Lake, but honestly, I don't think we're gonna get either of the Vanilla Lake tracks, so ultimately, yeah, SNES Bowser Castle 3 I think is happening, and it could very well be the reason why we're not getting Airship Fortress if that argument is indeed to be believed. Maybe Nintendo also just doesn't want the track for whatever arbitrary reason, I'm not sure, but regardless, part of me is quite sad as a result of it. I don't need to clarify this, but hands down, I would much rather have Airship Fortress than Daisy Circuit. I mean, you might as well be asking me at that point, would I rather want to play Mario Kart Wii or Super Mario Kart? It's not a tough decision. You can ask me 1,000 times, my answer's not gonna change. Moving onward yet again, and the next track to talk about is none other than GCN Mushroom Bridge. I'll be very blunt here, I'm happy Mushroom Bridge is not coming back. Now don't panic, I'm not one of those people who thinks, oh, Mushroom Bridge is mid. I am not one of those people, okay? I actually think the track is better than Daisy Circuit. There, I said it. However, I will say that Mushroom Bridge would be completely unnecessary to include in the Booster Course Pass, and this is primarily because of two tracks. First of all, DS Shroom Ridge. This track feels extremely similar to Mushroom Bridge, at least it always has for me. Both Mushroom Bridge and Shroom Ridge are really more chill tracks. Sure, they're traffic tracks, but they seem more laid back than some of the other ones, and they have a nice chill atmosphere to them. So Mushroom Bridge is very redundant theming wise, and on top of that, you then have Wii Moonview Highway, which I would argue is the best traffic track in the entire Mario Kart series to date. And ultimately, well, Mushroom Bridge, it wouldn't be the best traffic track, and it also wouldn't really stand out all that much. Sure, there's a bridge, sure there's a scenic route, and sure there's Wiggler buses, but is that enough to justify a track being included? I don't think so. Also, this track is about as easy as Daisy Circuit is to drive, only a tiny bit of difficulty involved, and that's just from dodging the cars and such, which isn't really that difficult. So all things being considered, it also doesn't get any kind of bonus when it comes to difficulty. Now, it is worth noting that there's likely going to be one GCN track in Wave 6 regardless of this, and when it comes down to it, theoretically, since Mushroom Bridge is indeed a GCN track, it could theoretically still have a chance, but will it realistically come? I highly doubt it. More than likely, the spot is going to go to either DK Mountain or Dino Dino Jungle, and out of the two, I'd say DK Mountain is definitely the preferred of the two. But regardless of whichever one Nintendo picks, Mushroom Bridge is having to compete with a track that is more difficult and that is more popular, plus a track which also is more unique in the context of the Booster Course Pass. So ultimately, I'd go ahead and say, even though we're going to get a GCN track, Mushroom Bridge's chances of actually getting in may as well be zero. And frankly, Daisy Circuit just about killed its chances too. Moving onward to the final track to discuss, and we have none other than Wii Dry Dry Ruins. This track really confuses me. If the mystery retro track would have been from literally any game other than Wii, I would have assumed that the reason why this track did not get in is because Nintendo wanted to give another game more representation. And if it was literally any game besides Tour, that argument would have worked fine, and Tour was never an eligible candidate for the mystery retro. So yeah, literally any other game, it would have worked. But no, Nintendo picked a Wii track and made it so it wasn't Dry Dry Ruins. So the issue isn't that it's a Wii track. The issue isn't that Wii has been in the booster course pass so much, so let's give another game a shot. That's not the problem. That's not why we got Daisy Circuit, because that argument doesn't apply to Daisy Circuit because it's a Wii track. So, what other possible reason is there? Maybe Nintendo thinks that it clashes too much with Dry Dry Desert. Yes, the naming is similar. Dry Dry Desert, Dry Dry Ruins. Yes, the theming is similar, at least for the outside of Dry Dry Ruins. Sure, okay. Saharan-style desert, you have pillars falling, you have pokies to dodge, okay. This is, however, excluding the fact that Dry Dry Ruins is much more complicated, much more condensed, much more difficult to traverse, and in general is much less open-ended compared to Dry Dry Desert, and it also is excluding the fact that about half the track takes place in an inside portion which has its own distinct soundtrack, which has a completely different visual style, completely separate from the outside portion, and which is nothing alike anything present in Dry Dry Desert. My point is, these two tracks are named similarly. They kind of conflict visually speaking, but also kind of don't, and gameplay-wise, they are nothing alike for all intents and purposes. So ultimately, I would say it's not a problem. Maybe Nintendo thought that the required half-pipes inside the inside section were a problem. Lots of people in DK Summit were arguing that the half-pipes were really, really janky. So perhaps Nintendo thought that bringing back a track which effectively requires the use of half-pipes would not be to their benefit. Maybe Nintendo was scared of bringing back this track because of the sand falling at the end of the inside portion. There is sand that gradually accumulates over the course of the laps, and it slowly fills the room up with sand. And there are pokies to dodge in this room, with it becoming harder and harder to traverse through the center as the race goes on. Maybe Nintendo cannot implement this for whatever reason, and so decided it would be better to scrap the track rather than trying to include it while leaving out this key feature of the track in order to avoid a situation like Sunset Wilds. Ultimately, I do see reasons why Nintendo could have hypothetically decided to not go for this track, but the fact that they still went with the Wii track and they didn't pick Dry Dry Ruins still baffles me, and it makes me think that there was something that they really struggled with and ultimately decided that it would really hurt the track, and so they decided not to go for it, which makes me think it was something in the inside portion that ultimately leaned them towards doing Daisy Circuit instead. It could also be a case of Nintendo thinking that there's enough desert tracks in the game, but I think you could also make an argument that there's enough circuit tracks in the game, so I don't really know how great of an argument that is. Ultimately, I would have much rather have had Dry Dry Ruins over Daisy Circuit. As far as my reasons why, let's get into this super duper quickly. It is much more interesting gameplay-wise. The track really evolves as you play it in a variety of different ways, which is super appealing. The theming is super interesting. Yes, it's a desert track, but there's also an entire inside portion, which really spices things up. And in general, the track is actually somewhat difficult. The track actually challenges your ability to drive, unlike Daisy Circuit, which for the most part is fairly easy. I feel the need to say again that the fact that we got Daisy Circuit over Dry Dry Ruins is insane. Finally, we can circle back to the question that I started this entire long part of the video over. Should we have gotten Daisy Circuit or should we have gotten a different track? Is Daisy Circuit the best track we could have gotten for Wave 6? And the answer, at least in my opinion, is no. Airship Fortress would have easily been my pick as it screams Wave 6. It is a fan favorite, one of the most popular tracks in the entire series, and honestly, having this as the mystery retro track would have made a ton of people extremely excited, and it would have been extremely hyped. I mean, imagine the teaser trailer if they just revealed DS Airship Fortress. People would have lost their absolute minds. Not many people really did that with Daisy Circuit by comparison. That being said, however, Daisy Circuit isn't even my second pick. I would have also preferred Dry Dry Ruins or Rosalina's Ice World over it. I'm not going to really go into a ton of detail as to why, as I already went on massive explanations for each of the tracks already, but I think you can get my general points as far as why this is the case. Ultimately, Daisy Circuit isn't a bad choice, but it's also far from the best choice Nintendo could have made. But here's the other thing. Daisy Circuit happens to be a Wii track, and this has definitely made some people raise some eyebrows, because some people, including myself, have noticed that Wii is quite consistently getting representation in the Booster Course Pass. Now, of course, every game in the series, excluding the arcade games obviously, are going to be represented in the Booster Course Pass to some capacity. After all, we want to represent every game, and naturally some games will be represented more than others. However, there have been some people which have pointed out that Wii is getting a bit too much representation compared to the other games, and I want to explore that in the next portion of the video. I went ahead and I counted how many tracks there are from every single Mario Kart game so far in the Booster Course Pass, waves 1 through 5, and these are the results. So far, SNES has 1 track. N64 has 2 tracks. GCN also has 2 tracks. 3DS, fittingly, has 3 tracks. DS has 4 tracks. GBA has 5 tracks. Wii has 6 tracks. And finally, Tour has a whopping 17 tracks. Now doing the exact same thing, but using my Wave 6 predictions, SNES now has 2 tracks, with the additional SNES track being SNES Bowser Castle 3. N64 remains unchanged with 2 tracks. GCN now has 3 tracks, with the new track being GCN DK Mountain. 3DS still fittingly remains unchanged at 3 tracks. DS also remains unchanged with 4 tracks. GBA continues this trend by also remaining unchanged and remains at 5 tracks. Wii now has 8 tracks, with the 2 new tracks being Wii Daisy Circuit as well as Wii Rainbow Road. And finally Tour, which has a grand total of 21 tracks, with the 4 new tracks being none other than Tour Madrid Drive, Tour Roma Avanti, Tour Piranha Plant Cove, and Tour Piranha Plant Pipeline. As far as my interpretation of the data, well, first and foremost, forget about Mario Kart Wii. Mario Kart Tour is the problem. Tour has so many more tracks than any other game, it's actually insane. But hold on a second. There is a reason behind this absolute chaos, and the reasoning behind it is Tour preservation. I will say this does not speak highly as far as future efforts by Nintendo to preserve Tour for future generations, but regardless, let's go ahead and let's not focus on that for now and instead focus on the video. Nintendo's goal in the Booster Course Pass as far as Tour content is to preserve it by porting it over to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That is why every single Tour Nitro in existence, whether it's a city track or a non-city track, is being ported over into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So there you go. That is why there's so many Tour tracks. And ultimately, Tour is definitely a special case. Nintendo is not cherry picking these tracks. Nintendo is not trying to pick the best of these tracks. Nintendo is bringing back every track regardless of how good or bad it is, and that's that. So comparing Tour tracks to Wii tracks in this case is absolutely crazy, and so honestly we should just consider Tour its own thing for its own special reasons and only compare the Wii tracks to the other games, which is what I'm going to do for now on. Just comparing Wii to the other games, excluding Tour now, and yeah, definitely too many tracks. Seriously, 8 tracks is the prediction for Wii come the release of Wave 6, and the closest to it is GBA at 5 tracks, which is just over halfway there. And every other game, at best, has half the tracks. If that is not too many, I genuinely don't know what too many looks like in this context. Also, real quickly, yes, 8 Wii Tracks. You heard that correctly. I did mention this before, but I probably should clarify this really quickly. Yes, Daisy Circuit is indeed confirmed, but Wii Rainbow Road is speculation. That being said, however, Wii Rainbow Road I see literally 0 alternatives for, and I'd say it's essentially guaranteed. It's very important to keep in mind that the Booster Course Pass is pulling tracks from Mario Kart Tour. So if a track has not been remade in Mario Kart Tour, it's not coming to the Booster Course Pass. That being said, that leaves Wii Rainbow Road and the RMX Rainbow Road tracks as the only options when it comes to Rainbow Road tracks in Mario Kart Tour that have not been remade yet in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So yeah, unless we get the RMX Rainbow Road tracks, we're getting Wii Rainbow Road. So yes, just to recap, 8 Wii tracks is definitely excessive. But just because it's too many doesn't necessarily mean that I think it's a bad thing. Yes, proportionately speaking, it's overkill, but ultimately, I don't think it actually hurts the Booster Course Pass. I really don't, and that's because for the most part, with the only exception being Daisy Circuit, I think Nintendo has been picking extremely good Wii Nitros. Wii Coconut Mall is not ruined in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and still remains a masterpiece. Wii Mushroom Gorge is the best it has ever been and remains a masterpiece. Wii Maple Treeway remains a masterpiece. Wii DK Summit also remains a masterpiece despite how half-pipes work in this game. While definitely inferior to the Wii version, Wii Koopa Cape still remains a masterpiece. While it does fall short of being a masterpiece, Wii Moonview Highway is still a fantastic track. As far as the Wave 6 Wii tracks go, Daisy Circuit definitely falls short compared to the others, though I still think it'll be good. And Rainbow Road, I have no doubts I will consider a masterpiece. When I say that a track is a masterpiece, that means that I can play a track over and over again and never really get sick of it, and it truly is a timeless classic that I would recommend to anyone regardless of their experience level with Mario Kart, and in general I believe that you will always have a great time with it. And yeah, as you can quite clearly see, I'm quite fond of the Wii tracks. What can I say? We really nailed it out of the park with its Nitro tracks. And ultimately, yeah, this is definitely very subjective, but I personally don't believe that there being so many Wii tracks is a problem when they're so good. Again, the only Wii track I would replace would be Daisy Circuit, and I'd replace it with Airship Fortress. Besides that, the other ones are fine, and I would not replace them at all. Wow, this was absolutely insane. I cannot believe I actually made an over 30-minute video for a 1-minute teaser trailer. Good heavens. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and end it off here finally. Thank y'all so much for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed. Hope y'all have a great day. And overall, I hope to see y'all next time. All right, bye!